Hello everyone and welcome to our module on the lumbosacral plexus. A plexus basically means a web of nerves coming out of the spine. In the arm region of the spine, there is a plexus of nerves called the brachial plexus, which I talk about in another video. The plexus of nerves in the lumbar region of the spine is called the lumbar plexus. It consists of nerves that derive from the T12 to L4 level. It's found in the lumbar region of the spine. That's why it's called the lumbar plexus. And it supplies innervation to the skin and muscles of the lower limb. On the left side of the screen is a drawing of the spine showing this web of nerves coming off of it in the lumbar region. That's the lumbar plexus. There's another drawing of this on the right side of the screen showing how nerve roots from the first lumbar and second lumbar and other levels come together in this plexus and form various nerves that travel down into the lower leg. The sacral plexus is a nerve plexus a level down from the lumbar plexus. It derives from nerve roots L4 to S4. It's found in the sacral region of the spine, and it supplies innervation to the skin and muscles of the pelvis and lower limb. And often the lumbar plexus and sacral plexus are considered together and simply called the lumbosacral plexus. On the left side of the screen is a drawing of the body showing you the lumbar plexus here and the sacral plexus found below that. And then on the right is a drawing of the sacral plexus showing all the different nerve roots contributing to nerves that travel down into the pelvis and lower leg. For the rest of this video, I'm going to go through many of the nerves that derive from the lumbosacral plexus. Questions about these nerves are generally easy points in the Step 1 exam. If you just know what the nerve does and how it's commonly injured, you can usually get the question correct. So we'll start with the iliohypogastric nerve, which derives from the T12 to L1 level. If we go back to this drawing, the T12 level is here and the first lumbar level is here. And these nerve roots give rise to the iliohypogastric nerve and also a related nerve called the ilioinguinal nerve. This nerve is motor to two abdominal muscles, the internal oblique and the transverse abdominis muscles. They're shown in this picture at the bottom left side of the screen. This is the internal oblique here and the transverse abdominis muscle is here. In addition, the iliohypogastric is sensory to the suprapubic region of the abdomen, which is also called the hypogastric region. That's how this nerve gets its name. This region is below the umbilicus and above the pubic bone. If you look at the picture on the bottom right side of the screen here, this is the hypogastric region below the umbilicus and above the pubic bone. It's also called the suprapubic region. This nerve is commonly injured in abdominal or pelvic surgical operations. For example, it can be injured in a laparotomy or a laparoscopic surgery. It can also be injured in hernia surgery or a hysterectomy. The reason this nerve is injured in these surgeries is because surgeons commonly make what's known as a transverse incision. That's an incision across the lower abdomen or pelvis like this. When this is done and the wound is sutured up at the end of the operation, the sutures can trap the nerves, especially at the edges around here, so the iliohypogastric can get injured on one side. In addition, the ilioinguinal can also be injured as well. The symptoms this leads to following surgery are usually sensory. It's burning pain or paresthesias like tingling that radiate from the incision site to the suprapubic area. And this is very easy to remember if you remember what I just told you, which is that this nerve is sensory to the suprapubic or hypogastric area. You can also sometimes see sensory problems in the labia or scrotum or the thigh. These areas are innervated by the ilioinguinal nerve. Moving on, let's talk about the genitofemoral nerve. This nerve derives from the L1 to L2 spinal roots. If we go back to this picture, we're now moving further down the lumbosacral plexus. We're now talking about nerves that come from the first lumbar and second lumbar region. And one of those nerves is the genitofemoral nerve shown right here. This nerve is motor to the cremasteric muscle in males. This muscle covers the testis and spermatic cord. It has two sensory branches. One is called the genital branch. The other is called the femoral branch. That's how it gets its name, the genitofemoral nerve. The genital branch, as the name implies, innervates the skin of the anterior scrotum in males, which is part of the genitalia, and in females it supplies sensory innervation to the mons pubis and labia majora. The femoral branch supplies sensory innervation to the skin of the upper anterior thigh near the femur, and that's why it's called the femoral branch. This nerve is also commonly injured in abdominal surgery, often by retractor blades. So during surgical operations, an incision can be made like this, and a retractor blade will pull back the skin. Often the medical student is asked to hold the retractor blade, and that can, in some cases, damage the genitofemoral nerve. The symptoms this will lead to following surgery are in males absence of the cremasteric reflex. To evoke the cremasteric reflex, you stroke the inner thigh and the scrotum rises on the ipsilateral side. If this does not occur, that suggests injury to the nerve supplying the cremasteric muscle. In addition, there may be decreased sensation over the anterior thigh. This region here is supplied by the genitofemoral nerve, and that's easy to remember because it's right over the femur. and in addition there can be decreased sensation to the genital areas like the labia or the scrotum. Moving on, let's talk about the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. This nerve tells you everything you need to know about it in its name. It's a pure sensory nerve from L2 to L3 that supplies the skin on the lateral side of the upper leg, in other words, the outside of the femur. That's why it's called the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. And if we go back to this drawing, we're now moving another level down the lumbosacral plexus. We're talking about the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve, which derives from spinal roots at the L2, L3 level. I've put this picture of this obese man on the screen here because this is what you want to think of whenever you hear of the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. This man with his big belly is the exact type of person who's going to have a problem with this nerve. The lateral femoral cutaneous courses under the inguinal ligament into the thigh, so it's easily compressed in people who have big bellies. Obese people, pregnant women can also be compressed by tight clothing. This is the type of situation where someone is going to complain of symptoms because of dysfunction of the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. The pain syndrome that occurs when this nerve is compressed is called meralgia paresthetica. This is an outer thigh nerve syndrome. It involves sensory symptoms in the lateral femoral area, which is the area shown in red on this drawing. Patients will complain of burning pain in this area. They may complain of paresthesias, like numbness and tingling. They may also complain of hypoesthesia, which is diminished sensation. This is all related to compression of the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve, a classic symptom in someone with a large belly like an obese patient or a pregnant woman. Next, let's talk about the obturator nerve, which derives from the L2 to L4 spinal roots. Here's the obturator nerve here. It derives its innervation from the fourth lumbar, third lumbar, and second lumbar spinal levels. The obturator nerve gets its name from the word obturare, which is Latin for to close. And if you know this, it's easy to remember that the obturator nerve is important for closing or adducting the thigh, meaning bringing the thigh back to midline so that the legs are closed together. The obturator nerve is motor to most of the thigh adductors, like the adductor longus, brevis, and magnus, also the gracilis and the obturator externus. It also is sensory to a small portion of the medial thigh. If you look at this drawing on the screen here, much of the anterior medial thigh is supplied by a branch shown in yellow here, but there's a small spot not shown in this picture right about here that is sensory from the obturator nerve. The obturator nerve courses through the posterior pelvis. If you look at this drawing on the screen here, this is the obturator nerve here in the back of the pelvis. And for this reason, it can be injured during pelvic surgery. The classic way this happens is through injury from a trocar. This is a trocar shown on the screen here. It's a surgical instrument. It's a hollow tube, and you can insert it into the abdomen, and then you can insert other instruments through the trocar to get at structures in the back of the pelvis. So if the trocar is pushed too far into the back of the pelvis, it can damage the obturator nerve. And the symptoms this will result in following the surgery are weak adduction of the thigh and numbness in that small patch of skin on the medial thigh that's innervated by the obturator nerve. Next, let's talk about the femoral nerve. This nerve derives from nerve roots L2 to L4. If we go back to this slide, this is the femoral nerve shown here. It receives innervation from L2, L3, and L4. This nerve has both motor and sensory functions, and an easy way to remember what it does is to remember that it's named for the femur bone in the leg. So it is motor and sensory to structures that are related to the femur bone. So for example, it innervates many of the anterior thigh muscles. We'll talk about that in a minute. It innervates hip flexors and knee extensors, and its sensory functions are also closely related to the femur bone. Some of the hip flexors innervated by the femoral nerve are shown in this picture. First of all, the pectineus, which is shown right here, is a hip flexor. It's located very close to the femur bone, and therefore naturally it's innervated by the femoral nerve. The iliacus is part of the iliopsoas, so the iliacus and the psoas muscle in the abdomen and pelvis come together to form a single muscle near the hip called the iliopsoas. The iliacus is innervated by the femoral nerve. And then finally the sartorius, shown in this picture at the bottom left, is also innervated by the femoral nerve. The quadriceps are four muscles in the anterior thigh that extend at the knee. They're all innervated by the femoral nerve. The four muscles that make up the quadriceps are the rectus femoris and the vastus muscles, the vastus lateralis, medialis, and intermedius. If you look at this picture on the screen here, this is the rectus femoris here, the vastus medialis is here, the vastus lateralis is here, and the intermedius is not shown. It's deep to the rectus femoris. But all of these muscles attach at the knee and they straighten the leg. In other words, they lift the lower leg and extend at the knee, and they are all innervated by the femoral nerve. Sensory branches of the femoral nerve innervate the medial thigh and lower leg. There are branches called the anterior cutaneous branches of the femoral nerve. and they innervate the skin of the anteromedial thigh. That's this area shown in yellow on this drawing. The femoral nerve also gives off a branch called the saphenous nerve, which is sensory to the medial leg and foot. That's this region shown in red on the screen here. And the major clinical tie-in here has to do with saphenous vein stripping. So when patients go for cardiac bypass surgery, the saphenous vein is often removed from the leg and used as a bypass conduit. When this is done, it often damages the saphenous nerve, and this leads to numbness in the lower leg. And many of my patients in clinic who have had coronary artery bypass grafting surgery have numbness in their lower leg, and that's because the saphenous nerve was damaged, and that's a branch of the femoral nerve. Femoral nerve block is a technique used for anesthesia to the leg for surgical procedures. Basically, you inject a local anesthetic into the femoral nerve so that the patient will lose sensation in the leg for a surgical procedure. This is usually done together with block of the obturator and femoral cutaneous branches so that the entire lower leg will not have sensation. What you want to know about this for step 1 of your boards is the anatomy in the inguinal canal. So in the femoral region in the inguinal canal, the structures go from lateral to medial: femoral nerve, followed by femoral artery, then vein, and then the lymphatic channel. So if you want to perform a femoral nerve block, you palpate the artery, which is easy to feel with your fingers. You can feel it in the groin of the patient, and then you inject laterally to that, which is on the outside. That's where the nerve is found, and when you do this, the local anesthetic will block the femoral nerve. Rarely, the femoral nerve can be injured by a process in the pelvis, like a pelvic fracture or pelvic surgery. And when this happens, the femoral nerve will be compressed and there will be weakness of all the muscles innervated by the nerve. So patients with femoral nerve injury will demonstrate weakness in flexion of the thigh and extension at the knee. Another high-yield thing to remember about the femoral nerve is that that is the nerve that participates in the patellar reflex. So shown on the screen is the patellar reflex. You tap on the patella or the kneecap with your hammer, and then the lower leg should kick out. That's extension at the knee, and that is mediated by the femoral nerve. So if you ever see a board question where they describe a weak or absent patellar reflex, that's usually a dead giveaway that they're talking about the femoral nerve. Other symptoms you can see can be sensory related to the femoral nerve, so this can include numbness, tingling, and burning, all in the thigh or knee, the areas that the femoral nerve innervates. The sciatic nerve derives from the lumbosacral plexus levels L4 to S3. It's the largest nerve in the body. It's up to 2 centimeters wide, and it has both motor and sensory functions. And in the video on lumbar radiculopathy, I talk about the sciatic nerve in detail because many lumbar radiculopathy syndromes involve the sciatic nerve. What I'm going to talk about in this video, however, are the 2 branches of the sciatic nerve in the lower leg. Those are the common peroneal and the tibial. If you look at this drawing on the screen here, this is the sciatic nerve running down the back of the thigh. It branches into the common peroneal and the tibial nerve, and that's what we'll talk about next. The common peroneal nerve is also sometimes called the common fibular nerve. It's motor and sensory to the lower leg. This nerve gets its name because fibula is the Latin word for clasp, and that's how the fibula bone was named, because people thought it looked like a clasp. Peroneus is the Greek word for clasp, and therefore this nerve is often called the common peroneal nerve. The common peroneal nerve has a number of motor functions. First of all, it's motor to the short head of the biceps femoris, which is one of the hamstring muscles that flexes the knee. This is the only hamstring innervated by this nerve. This is a relatively minor role for this nerve. It also gives off a branch called the superficial fibular nerve, which supplies motor innervation to muscles of the lateral lower leg. The 2 muscles it innervates are called the fibularis longus and brevis, and these evert the foot. And then finally, it gives off a branch called the deep fibular nerve, which supplies muscles of the anterior lower leg. These muscles include the tibialis anterior, the extensor digitorum longus, and the extensor hallucis longus. I don't recommend you try to remember all these muscles. But what you should know is that these muscles are important for dorsiflexion of the foot and extension of the toes. So if you look at this drawing on the screen here, dorsiflexion of the foot means to move the foot and the toes upward, and that is done by the common peroneal nerve via the branch, the deep fibular nerve. In addition, the deep fibular nerve is motor to some of the intrinsic muscles of the foot. The common peroneal nerve supplies sensory innervation to portions of the lower leg and to the dorsum of the foot. If you look at this picture on the right side of the screen here, this area in yellow is supplied by branches of the common peroneal nerve that includes the dorsum or the top of the foot. Now let's talk about common peroneal nerve lesions, and to understand these lesions you need to appreciate that the common peroneal nerve wraps around the fibula below the knee. Remember that peroneal and fibula are words that derive from the same root meaning a clasp. So common peroneal nerve lesions often happen when there's pressure on the area near the fibula below the knee. So this could be from prolonged lying like bed rest or surgery. Sometimes a cast on the leg can do this, and sometimes a fracture of the fibula at the neck can do this. The symptoms when there's a common perineal nerve lesion include foot drop. There's usually weak dorsiflexion. The foot can feel limp. The patient may complain of tripping or falling. And there's sensory loss on the dorsum of the foot and the lateral shin. And the way to remember this is just know that the word perineal means the same thing as fibula, and then just remember fibula and foot. So anytime there's a problem with the common perineal nerve, there's going to be a problem with dorsiflexion of the foot and sensation on the dorsum of the foot. And then you can also remember that this usually occurs when there's compression near the fibula. That's where the common perineal nerve runs. The other branch of the sciatic nerve in the lower leg is the tibial nerve. This courses down the lower leg posterior to the tibia. That's why it's called the tibial nerve. This is a drawing on the screen showing you how it courses down the back of the leg. And if you know that this is the course of the nerve, it's very easy to remember that it innervates muscles in the posterior leg. We'll talk about what those muscles are in the next slide. Now when it gets down to the foot, it travels under the medial malleolus, which is this bump on the inside of your foot, and then it travels through a structure called the tarsal tunnel and supplies sensory innervation to the heel and the sole. The tibial nerve is motor to many deep and superficial leg muscles that are found in the posterior lower leg. I've listed the names of all the muscles on the screen here. You can also find them in this drawing here. I don't think it's very high yield to memorize the names of all these muscles, but what is important is that you understand what these muscles do. The muscles supplied by the tibial nerve are important for plantar flexion of the foot, which is shown in this drawing on the screen here. Also flexion of the toes, which means to curl the toes downward, and also inversion of the foot, which means to turn the sole of the foot inward towards the midline. And if you understand all that, it's very easy to understand what happens when there is damage to the tibial nerve. The nerve can be damaged at the heel from tarsal tunnel narrowing. This often happens following a heel or foot fracture or dislocation. The muscles in the posterior leg will be fine, but the sensory innervation of the foot will be affected. So the symptoms are mostly sensory, and they are symptoms like pain, burning, and numbness on the sole of the foot. Remember, the tibial nerve supplies the sole of the foot, and the common perineal nerve supplies the dorsum of the foot. Sometimes there can be tibial nerve damage at the knee. This is rare, but it can happen if there's a large Baker's cyst or trauma. In this case, all those muscles in the posterior leg will be affected, so the patient will lose plantar flexion, which means they can't stand on their toes. They won't be able to flex the toes, which is to curl the toes, and they will lose inversion of the foot. The last nerve I'll talk about in this module is the pudendal nerve, which comes from nerve roots S2 to S4, so way down low in the lumbosacral plexus. The word pudendal is Latin for to be ashamed, and if you know this, it makes it easy to remember that the pudendal nerve is the nerve supply to the genital area. In terms of motor innervation, it supplies the muscles of the perineum, the external urethral sphincter, and the external anal sphincter, as well as the levator ani. In terms of sensory innervation, it's sensory to the penis and clitoris and the skin of the perineum. The perineum is the floor of the pelvis between the legs, and shown in this drawing are a number of the muscles that are found in the perineum. You don't need to know what they all are, but you should know that these muscles are innervated by the pudendal nerve. So as you can imagine, this nerve is often injured from stretching in vaginal childbirth. After delivering a baby, women sometimes have perineal pain that's worse with sitting. They may have vulvar or scrotal pain, or they may have fecal or urinary incontinence, and this is all related to damage to the pudendal nerve. Pudendal nerve block is a technique used to numb the genital region in vaginal childbirth to reduce pain. This isn't done much in the modern era. It's largely been replaced by epidural anesthesia. But the way a pudendal nerve block is done is by injecting a local anesthetic into the area around the ischial spine of the pelvis. This is the point of entry of the pudendal nerve into the pelvis. So the way you do this is you have the patient lie in the lithotomy position. That's what's shown in this picture right here. And then through the vagina, you palpate the ischial spine of the pelvis, which is this point right here. And then you inject a local anesthetic in this region, and that will numb the pudendal nerve, and that will provide pudendal nerve block during childbirth. And that concludes our video on the lumbosacral plexus.